wanted to bring Shawn Gumataotao on, and I don't know what hat he's wearing this morning. Shawn, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Chris and Bree.
Hey. So, did you watch the oversight hearing?
I did. I always watch. Was watching with particular interest, considering as they're talking about midway through, talking about reviews of purchase orders and the like. And I guess, and I'll just talk about it just now. There was a story in the PDN last week about even our purchase order with the government of Guam, and I will tell you. You mentioned it just a couple minutes ago about process and about being proper. Well, at least I can assure at least the one I'm working with now or working to get back onto was done properly. So I can't speak for the other ones. But I think it was just this, as these things started to unravel, and I would say probably assuming after Tony Babauta's resignation, a lot of this just started to come to pass. So and it's part of a process that I think it's important for everyone to know. And I think yesterday when you had Attorney Brown on, he was really pointed about this process, and I think sometimes we just kind of forget. But I will tell you, it was a very long 4 hours last night. That's for darn sure.
Mm-hmm. Excruciatingly long.
Yeah, I was watching, and it's even crazy if you look on the YouTube. You know, YouTube has a limit, right? It goes, okay, we'll have two parts of this. I mean, even that's how long it is, even for most people who would be a casual observer. But it was in parts of it, it was hard to follow because it was, you have to wonder about if we were understanding the questions being asked. And you guys brought up some really great points this morning, and I mean, I think I share much of your sentiment too.
Mm-hmm. So you've worked at the governor's office. You're the former communications director for former Governor Felix Camacho, and you also were in charge of the Joint Information Center during your time with the former governor. Based on what you watched last night, what you heard last night, is this how procurement is handled? And is there a such thing as what did I say? Emergency purchases, or it wasn't procurement; it was emergency purchases. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, as I listened to that, I had to just go back to my experience, and I would tell you when I was listening to Claudia, and to Chuck Esteves, that is the process that I think not only most of GovGuam, but most of those who support GovGuam are familiar with, and it continues to work to this moment. Now, the other process, which was this the quarantine facilities, there's always going to be that opinion that what they were doing was the right thing. As they felt that something wasn't happening quick enough, that they needed to do something, and so they did it. And now, as the whole community is watching what's happening now, all it's saying is, okay, for me, as a person who's done this before, it's likely that this is not going to get reimbursed by the feds. This is going to be a GovGuam bill that's going to be eaten and under the general fund, and we're just going to have to move forward. And I think that's something that I don't think was really...
Is it, though? Because we're using CARES funding?
Well, even if you're using CARES funding, remember, if you're going to follow a process, and if you don't follow it, why would the federal government want to reimburse something that wasn't done correctly?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of what they were floating out there, was like, yeah, all of this doesn't matter because we're going to use the CARES Act funding. Well, I know they're going to audit the CARES Act funding, and when they do, if you don't have a single piece of paper or unsigned contract, what do you think the federal government's going to say?
Well, and I just go back to our experience. There was a couple of bills that were not paid during the Gutierrez administration and during the Pang Song-Hwa response. It had to go to Congress to get paid. There was a payment, I can't remember if it was some kind of waste removal, but it got a federal or a congressional appropriation. That was down the road years after the response had ended, because this company wasn't going to get paid, and they got obviously when you have if you live in a state and you have state representatives and state senators, it's a little bit different. In our case, there's a strong chance that because of this, and this is just my assumption, unless something happens today or the next couple days to change the course of this entire issue, it's likely it's something that the general fund is going to have to absorb.
Yeah, Shawn, and I got to go back to what you said about the process that Claudia Faggi and Chuck Esteves had talked about as, you know, that's the way you do it, obviously.
Yes, exactly, and that hasn't. I don't think that's changed. It's not broken. I think people would agree that that process is still alive and well, and many of those corporations, including ours, who's done work with the government, has followed those rules, because obviously there's a lot of scrutiny, and who would want their business to be under the microscope during this most difficult time? And it wasn't like we didn't follow the process, and so it's very difficult for people to say that, or for all of us to watch, and if they followed it and see others didn't, then we're just like, hey, well, we're just going to keep moving forward,
right?
And that's all you can do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, Shawn, as a former communications director at Adaloop, executive privilege. My mind was blown when I read that executive privilege, and I just can't put together how Adaloop can continue to say that, no, we're transparent, we hold people accountable. But lo and behold, when it comes time to answer questions, you're going to hide behind attorney-client privilege and executive privilege. How have you ever heard of an instance in the government of Guam where a governor claimed executive privilege?
Yeah, see, and this is where we have this whole idea of the separation of powers issue, and she can raise those, and obviously we, if you're another branch of government, you should respect some parts of that argument. But I will tell you, it goes back to what we spoke about maybe 21 plus days ago when I was on your show last or so. It was talking about this idea of being, the whole reality of the situation and the reassurance that needs to be given. If you heard that and you think about the response, that still comes into question: is the reality and reassurance here? I don't know if the executive privilege issue amounts so much in these. Remember, it's an oversight, and that's another thing. It's such an interesting thing to see an oversight hearing in the middle of a response. We still got people, and remember, if you all woke up, remember 11 cases. We're still, we're still in an executive order that's closed. We still have all these things that are impacted, but we forget that. We're trying to get to the heart of issues that can be corrected after. We're trying to correct matters in the middle of a response, and that's the only thing. And I'm with you guys when you guys are being very very critical of the response, and it makes some sense. But when we think about legislative or policy, that's really going to take a little bit more time after this, especially when all of the missing parts and the screws that were not on these plates of policy are not, are unloosened and tightened again. We won't see this until after. Because I think you mentioned just a couple minutes ago about the OPA and the Attorney General, specifically the OPA, and they're going to be there at the end to kind of say, hey, was this done correctly? I think we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, who would think that in the middle of an active response, you would see like the chief of staff resigning, you would be hearing about situations where you have the cabinet officials working at quarantine facilities.
Yeah,
so I think, and you have the lieutenant governor saying, oh, red flags are being, So when you hear that, you see that, I'm sure the legislature was concerned. We were concerned. The people of Guam were concerned. And I think that's why we're seeing, and that's where we are at today.
Yeah.
And we are at here.
The process, in some ways, Shawn, it's already been corrected, right? So I asked the governor yesterday in the press conference, hey, if you stand by your superpowers and you did this way and you continuously say that it was legal, it was above board, it was, within your powers, then why'd you change? Why didn't you just keep doing it that way if it was totally fine?
Right. I think we heard her response, and again, we all can't be in that. We're not in that seat. And I think when she's saying she did that, and obviously there's a lot of opinion about that whole thing, and everyone will vary. I think just depends on, one, if it's a leadership style, it goes down to how they read the law, what they're trying to accomplish. But I'm of the opinion that the process was it's a very we're one of the few American communities that has a process that is pretty straightforward. It's been praised by FEMA and the federal government on many occasions. Why we would change our horses in midstream is something that I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around today.
Yeah, Claudia clearly stated that it took them all of 7 days to do this emergency procurement the proper way, the correct way, the traditional way.
And I will stake the her 2 decades plus experience, maybe almost close to 3, in what she's doing, and I think we, as our small community, can be well assured that she is doing her darndest, and someone with her vast knowledge, with some people behind her. Let's don't forget her staff are some of the most experienced at doing this, especially in emergency.
Right.
Those guys didn't start yesterday; they've been there a long time.
Right. And Claudia was there when you were over at Adeloop when you were in charge of.
She was there for 8 years. She was there, and before that, I think she came from GPA. She was at GPA during the Gutierrez administration. Do you think she did not work on disaster claims? I mean, she had done that. She had done this work, and her staff around her. And I know many of them personally. There's some great people there that understand the process, and I think that's, calling them in and asking. It's not hard, but I think sometimes in an emergency, especially these uncertain times, it's very difficult for us to get our head wrapped around. Sometimes they are going to do things that just might be a little bit different, and it wouldn't be the same as what happened, say, a couple responses ago.
Right. Shawn, I want to ask you, because there was a point in the hearing where the Adeloop policy director, Carlo Branch, came in to bail out the legal counsel. And when Claudia had said, it took us a week, they had chimed in, we didn't have a week. But then Mary Rhodes had said that they had been looking at facilities since January. Yeah. And, I want to go back to the criticism that was being said when the rest of the world was dealing with COVID-19, and people were like, why aren't we doing anything about COVID-19? I mean, it got like a sentence in the State of the Island address. And so this argument that, we had to act so quickly, it doesn't hold water with me, because we knew COVID-19, and had you acted sooner, you would have been able to do it the right way.
But it also, Chris, sounds like they had been working on it since, Mary is one of the most credible voices in this COVID-19 pandemic response. I take her word at it. She worked. I don't know how she pulled off the Theodore Roosevelt issue, but it goes back to, again, these are the credibility of a lot of professionals who are bringing to bear their knowledge and experience upon a particular response.
Yeah, and I thought that was a pretty. It was almost like a movie when you had the governor's legal counsel saying, no, we did this with GHRA. They were totally on board for all of it.
Packstar, all of it.
Mary Rhodes, yep. And I felt like they were trying to piggyback on Mary Rhodes' credibility. It was clear.
But Mary Rhodes made it clear she was not involved with Packstar.
I mean, that was crazy. When she entered that Zoom hearing, I was like, oh, my God.
I know.
Yeah, right. I mean,
I was like, well, you just got caught in a lie.
It did change the complexion of that hearing pretty quick, didn't it?
Yeah, and then
she called out Carlo.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my goodness.
I just, Adeloop, you only got Carlo Branch. He's your go-to guy. I mean, they weren't even really listening to him, and I think it's because the points he's bringing up have already been dealt with and put away. Right. And Mary Rhodes had, I just don't know how many times the Adeloop legal team was contradicted last night, and I don't know what to call it. I mean, they keep trying to. I feel like they're almost trying to back Linda and Pinko Denorsi into a corner, and you had Linda herself say in a hearing with the senators that she didn't recall the call, right. And then when they were talking about that yesterday, Carlo Branch tried to interrupt and give his version of events. It's like, what do you got to do with anything?
Right, and
we already heard it straight from Linda, who again was messaging this. I said, "Hey, good job at the hearing." She says, "I just tell the truth."
Right, and that is something that in my working with her, she is again she's one of the best in the business. And we talk about how we tell our employees, hey, what can you do if you keep at your job? Well, one day you can be the head of the director of the agency. And she shows her support and her knowledge of her agency, and also how much she backs the people that are doing this response. Those guys are out there right now at the airport picking people up. Her public health people are making calls to those that are positive. She has to have this. She has this all in front of her, and she's still having to answer those questions. I mean, she is the agency's director, and she's doing her darndest. And I think this morning, as we're all pondering what happened last night, I hope no one's forgetting that she did. That's her job, and she's doing her best. And I think that we're just forgetting that.
Shawn.
And she's the public health authority.
Right,
That's what I got. Like, she is in charge.
She's the one that should be running it, not.
Right. No, I mean, and again, but it goes back to process and how this is. I mean, last night they were saying, oh, it's broken. I'm like, well, that's debatable. But that's their prerogative. From a policy point of view, if the legislative branch believes there's something broken there, well, that is their role under the Organic Act to help fix. And hopefully they can get more details and help. They can see what they can do to assist in this very difficult time and uncertain time.
I think in reading all the emails, because we have all the emails, I don't think anything was broken. I just think they didn't know how to do it. I mean, it was clear. If you read the emails, the governor's legal counsel went out and did all this stuff, and then he went back and tried to get Claudia Faggi. There was an email I read that he sent to Claudia. It was like, hey, I need help with this, and to compile a procurement record according to the AG's office.
Sure.
So there's a lot of stuff that they didn't talk about, and they cited attorney-client privilege. But if you go into the emails, it's all there. I mean, yeah, they basically ran cover.
Right, and remember, one of the key parts of the in the phrase executive branch is execute. I mean, that is their role is to execute the laws of Guam. So they're trying to do their best with what they have to execute. And during this difficult time, sometimes and it's kind of like they call it like the fog of war, for lack of a better word this morning. But when you think about it, we have to rely on the professionals who've done this, and I think that might have been overlooked, in the last couple of weeks or so. And I'm hoping that they're not. I think moving forward that they can change that direction and help support them in a better way.
Right. Hey, what are you are you familiar with the Title 10 Special Powers Law that Carlo Branch has been constantly referring to, the Adelup keeps referring to?
Yeah, I mean, from my whole experience, yes, and there was a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things in that title and in that particular statute that gives the governor, a really wide range of. We use the word power, but it's the authority to do certain things, and I think, but it also they can't use it without the support of people like a Linda DeNorsi,
a public health authority,
right? Because she has even greater authority. She's one of few directors in the government today who have maybe more authority than the governor of Guam. I can think of a couple of different ones: the state historic preservation officer, the public health director, the tax commissioner. Those particular jobs they have way bigger authority than the governor, but they work in tandem to again go back to execute the laws of Guam, and that's what I think what we're missing is that's what their role is in support of in this case the support of the response.
Mm-hmm. But it seemed like she really didn't have much of a say, or practically no say.
Right. I mean, and I think there's and that can be debatable, and I think many of us would maybe agree or disagree. But the whole notion of the authority is there. It's in statute. Again, if policymakers want to make the change, then they have that prerogative to do so. But in the heart of a response, it's we're dealing with what we have. It goes back to the pandemic plan itself.
Mm-hmm.
We had these conversations before as well. Mm-hmm. The plan's old and it needs to be updated, and it had been. But we're working through it, and I think that's all we can do.
Right. Is it typical that the Homeland Security Advisor would be on take leave in the middle of a response?
I'm not really sure about that, Bree. I'm not sure. Hopefully his health is good.
No, I mean, is that
Wait, did I miss something?
I mean, is that something that would typically happen? I mean, yeah.
No, not
in the middle of a response.
Yeah, not typically. But remember, you have guys like Chuck Esteves who's there to support. So. I'm not sure why. That's a great question. I'm not really sure.
Wait, did I miss
something? Did you hear that?
Yeah, can you fill me in?
Because you said that he hasn't been involved, so why is he not there?
No, I'm just wondering, is that typical that Homeland Security Advisor...
It is not typical.
No, okay, yeah. Because I'm hearing he's on leave.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about, and that was somebody who was definitely missing was the Homeland Security Advisor, Tim Uggan.
Yeah,
they were throwing his name around, or the position.
That was.
And why wasn't he there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea. I was wondering why he wasn't there, sitting with Chuck.
Well, I think that Senator Sabina had said that did they not invite him, or maybe it was an oversight on the oversight? I don't know.
oversight of the oversight. Okay, there's.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I don't know. That's a great question. I think you might want to ask.
Yeah,
them.
we'll try and reach
Yeah.
out.
Are you asking me if I want to ask them about that, Shawn?
Oh, sure, man. Chris, you do a great job, man. I mean, heck. But we can have Adriana ask.
Are you asking us to have Adriana ask?
Hey, man, I've been listening to the press conferences too, man. You
Yeah.
guys are doing a good job, and it's like I said to people before. If you're not listening to this show during the day, you kind of missed a lot. Let's be honest, especially with this response. And you guys KWAM's doing a great job. And if I can say it publicly on behalf of everyone that's listening, you guys just keep up the good work, and you guys continue to ask those questions because they're very timely and they're very.
So are you asking us to continue asking questions?
Sure, if you're able to ask more than two.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks, Shawn.
Have a good 3-day weekend.
I sure will. Hey, you guys have a great holiday weekend and be safe out there. And again, hopefully everyone will heed and keep their social distancing and and then have a good weekend and be safe.
Okay. Thank you,
I'm
buddy.
washing my hands, Chris.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say.
Thanks,
Right on.
Chris.
Yeah, is that a lawyer thing, Sabrina?
What?
When somebody asks you a question and then you ask them if they just asked you the question they just asked you? Because that happened a lot at the hearing.